Sports Professor Rick Horrow, keeping score beyond the boardroom. Very interesting perspective here. We're at the Joe Madden Trying Not to Suck benefit tournament. Yeah, don't blow me off the air for that. It benefits his Hazleton Foundation, HIP, the Integration Project. And each year it's been more of a tradition, but now we have a tradition of every year the Cubs win the World Series, we're going to follow up 3 months, 5 months later with a tournament that's going to benefit them and even generate more money. And one of the stalwarts of the Cubs, who has an incredibly interesting story, if not an interesting name, Pete LaCock.
Rick, glad to be here. It's a beautiful day here in Chicago, and I can't wait to get this started.
Well, and Pete has been toiling in the hinterlands with the Cubs, obviously, for years, and proud, like everybody is, player and fan, to look back and have people stop him on the street and talk about what it's like to now be affiliated in some way with the defending world champion Chicago Cubs. How does it feel?
It feels great. You know, when I first started with the Cubs, I was kind of at the end of the old guys era, with Sano and Kessinger and Becker and Pepitone. And, I learned a lot of baseball from these guys, and they took me under my wing when I first got up, because I was young when I got there. And I saw the evolution of baseball.
And the evolution of baseball has been quite significant. So from when you broke in, which was when?
Was 1971.
All right, so it's been 80 years? No, it's been a long time since you broke in. It feels like it. What is the biggest change that you've seen in the business of baseball since you broke in the early 70s?
Well, I think money is probably the biggest thing that you see. When I was first year, minimum salary was $18,000, and now it's almost $500,000. And so that has changed the game a lot. A lot of times when you were doing appearances, autograph things, it was to make money and to get by. But, now things have changed where these guys have enough money to do whatever they want.
So 46 years since you broke in, and the payroll now for the Cubs starting the season was about $178 million. Do you have second thoughts? If you had to do over again, would you have been born 45 years later?
Absolutely not. I really loved the time that I played. These guys were so dedicated. I remember coming up and seeing Fergie Jenkins and Billy Williams, Ernie Banks, and these guys were making $100,000 a year. They played 20 years, Hall of Fame careers. Things have changed.
Cubs, according to Forbes, are now worth $2.7 billion with the B. They generated about $500 million in revenue last year. You got a $500 million Wrigley Field renovation in Wrigleyville next to it, and the Zachary Hotel, and on and on and on. And when you were play ball with Jack Brickhouse in the afternoon. How does it feel to kind of be involved in a brand that's undergone such a metamorphosis?
It's really great to see it. And last year was so exciting. The ups and downs in the playoffs and the World Series were spectacular. And if you don't like baseball after seeing the World Series and playoffs, there's something wrong with you.
Well, and obviously there's something wrong with being a Cleveland Indian fans at Game 7, right? So everybody in Chicago that I've talked to, it's generational. They remember where they were, the Kennedy assassination, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, if you go way back when. This rises to that. How does it make you feel being affiliated with that kind of movement?
I'm really proud to be affiliated with the Cubs, and it's a shame because, I played with the Royals and I was in playoffs, World Series, and they don't do anything for their alumni, not like the Cubs do. And Mr. Ricketts has made the alumni feel like they're part of the organization.
So the branding of the Cubs is obviously very important. How do you, and I think you just partially answered it, how do you kind of play your part? What is the next step to perpetuating the brand? It's now met the challenge of winning the World Series, onward and upward, but how do you kind of keep pace with the brand and make sure that the Cubs stay the brand that is one of the top 5 or 6 in baseball?
Well, you look at it, some of the older guys, they're older guys now. And, the guys that are coming in, like Gary Matthews, myself, Bob Denier, there's a lot of guys that are proud to be Cubs. We love to go to the ballpark and meet people and just, be a supporter of the Chicago Cubs.
All right, now here's the piece that the Reuters International and other audiences really want to know. Pete LaCock's baseball career is only one small part of this Renaissance man. So talk about Pete LaCock and entertainment and your dad and the whole story.
You know, I grew up, my dad's Peter Marshall, the host of Hollywood Squares, but a lot of people didn't know that my dad's sister is Joanne Drew, and she co-starred with John Wayne, and you know, we always had interesting people in our house, that's for sure. Sammy Davis Jr. was a really good friend of my dad's. There were a lot of the guys at Rat Pack, because my dad did summer stock every year in Las Vegas, and that kind of grew up in Vegas, hanging out with Joey Bishop and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. And Tom Dreesen's here, and he's a great guy too, and a good friend of my dad's. And you know, it's interesting because growing up with that, you know, people always say, wasn't that exciting? Well, it was just, that's the way it was. You know, those people were friends of my dad's, and it was just kind of normal to see them around.
Most people try to grow up and play baseball and can't hit a curveball and go into acting. You have another perspective. When did you realize when you were growing up that your career was with stick and ball, not stage and screen?
Well, you know, I didn't start playing baseball till I was 14, and then I was a #1 draft pick when I was 17, and you know, it was amazing. I really wanted to play professional football, and I'm surely glad I didn't go that route. And you know, in my high school, I had guys like Robin Yount, Rick Dempsey, Rick Auerbach, Kevin Kennedy, Guy Hansen, Larry Durker, Rick Durker, Larry Yount. You know, so we had a good baseball program, and we learned a lot. And we played a 62-game high school schedule, so we played a lot of baseball. There were a lot of scouts looking at other people, and you know, I just happened to get picked up.
Sports and entertainment, you have the ability to see it firsthand, the differences and similarities. What are the kind of biggest differences between the world of sports and the world of entertainment from your perspective?
Well, you know, the world of entertainment is definitely who you know. And in baseball, you can't hide talent. You've got to perform. Everything's a number, and if your numbers don't fit, you're not going to play baseball very long. So that's kind of it. My dad started singing in nightclubs when he was 12 years old in New York. You know, and you know, my dad's dad died at an early age, and he went out and he made himself who he is today. And I mean, can you imagine going to New York and singing in little clubs at 12 years old? But my dad's sister was Joanne Marshall at that time, and she was a Vogue model. And then when they moved her to Hollywood, she said, Marshall's too long, you got to go to Joanne Drew. So, you know, people are always saying, well, why is her name Drew? You're the Marshall, your name LaCock. My dad's name is Ralph Pierre LaCock, and that's what my name is.
So Hollywood Squares with Ralph Pierre LaCock, Jr. or Sr., that wouldn't have cut it, would it?
No. And, you know, people don't really know. He was a comedian, you know, Noonan and Marshall. I remember watching him on Ed Sullivan. And, you know, my dad was like a Ronan Martin type comedy act. And, you know, Peter LaCock would have been pretty good as a comedy, but, you know, not probably good for Hollywood Squares. But he did Broadway most of his life. That's where he really enjoyed. He loves to be on stage.
So your dad lives in L.A. now?
He does live in L.A. He's still singing. He's 91 years old. He just was at the McAllen Theater in Palm Desert doing a concert, a Nat King Cole thing. And he's got a radio show, you know, 5 days a week, Music of Your Life on PBS. And so he keeps busy.
Dodgers fan, Royals fan, Cubs fan?
My dad's a Cub fan.
He was because of you? Or, yeah, obviously.
Yes. You know, and again, you know, the Cubs have always been so nice to my family, my dad especially. You know, when he'd come into town, they'd make him feel special. But, you know, if you're a Cub player and it doesn't matter who your dad is, they make you feel good.
Talk sports for another minute, and we were going to talk about it anyway, but you referred to it. So this CTE study that was just done, and 99% of all the brains donated to Science from Football have CTE, they said. Ninkovich retires. John Urschel, this mathematician, retires from the Ravens. You said you made the right decision going into baseball. Give us your perspective as a guy who knows sports about how that all is going to end and where that is.
I don't know. You know, I have friends that played professional football, guys from the Chiefs, guys from the Cardinals, and these guys, you know, they got big judgment, $2 million, and they said they could take the $2 million back. I want my brain back. Can you imagine? You see, these guys are so big and so strong and physical, and I don't care what kind of helmet you have on, I don't care what kind of equipment, how good it is, you're still going to have brain injury.
So the other perspective is the way sports has evolved. Again, it's been years, but you're active in all of that. What's the next thing the next big thing that's going to change in the whole world of sports?
I really don't know. I think, again, you're looking at American baseball that's being controlled by foreign players. Pretty soon in 10 years, they may have 15% Americans and everything else going to be foreign. I played in Japan. I know that they're dedicated. I've played in Dominican, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Mexico. I played in all those countries. And these kids, they want out. And they work hard. And here in America, I hate to say it, I'll probably get terrible calls, but the kids are pretty lazy here.
Yeah.
And, they're not as dedicated as these kids that want to get out of the country. They take these kids when they're 13. They house them, they feed them, they train them, and then they sell them.
Speaking of final comment, speaking of lazy, which you're not, you're looking good. There's half of you left.
Yeah.
You lost like 40 pounds. So a leaner, meaner Pete LaCock. Athletically, you're still doing the things you used to do. So what's next for you for the next 5-10 years for yourself?
I have 2 grandsons, and they control my life. I love being a granddad. And that's what I'm concentrating on. I really am. Besides my health, the doctor told me if I don't do this, and this and this, you're going to have trouble. So I did this and this and this, and now it's amazing. I feel good. I'm much healthier, and it just takes a little wake-up call.
So Pete LaCock, sportsman, global sports icon, Peter Marshall Jr., you could say, obviously Renaissance man. Thank you very much, my friend.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cool.